Welcome into room 442, everyone. Big smiles across the board here because we've seen TFC win their first game of the season. Sara Poraria joined with Michael Singh, of course, and TFC won their first match over the weekend against Inter Miami at home at BMO Field, 2-0. Mikey, how important was this win for TFC? We spoke about it last week, but finally, a little bit of light.
Yeah, no, really important, I think, because we know the way that the season started for this team. And for a team that came in with higher expectations, for a team that really stumbled into this season here, they needed to pick up this win at this point in the year. And you take a look at the standings, they're not that far behind. And look who's in first place. It's Atlanta, and the only team to have taken points off Atlanta so far this year has been Toronto FC. So, you know, it's a nice reminder to people just how quickly this MLS season can turn and how quickly narratives can shift. Because now I think we're going to be talking about TFC in a bit more of a positive light because they finally start to show us some life. It's about what they do with this next. And yeah, you asked how important was this win? Let's hear from TFC head coach Bob Bradley on that.
It was important tonight. You know, the beginnings of seasons are strange between weather, between fields, between, you know, and look, it is what it is, but cold weather teams have it a little bit harder because you finish up preseason and then the season starts, and are you training outside, and, you know, the continuation of the work in preseason to get into the season. So there's challenges early in the year. You know, the games aren't always great yet. And I think that we hurt ourselves so badly at the end of that first game. You know, I mean, what a good win that would have been because we played a good second half. You know, and look, I thought actually after going down against DC, we played pretty well. But we let it all get away with some plays late in the game. But I feel like we've managed that. And then most of all, the players needed to feel a good win. They needed to feel a team effort where everybody comes in at the end of the game and everybody knows that all the guys around have contributed. And look, that includes guys that don't play, because if you're going to have good training in a week, you've got to have everybody coming in every day with the right mentality.
I think that last part was really huge from that. I know it was a long little blurb there, but I think that last part where he said it was really important for the team itself to experience a win. Because if you think back what we were talking to at this point last week, we were talking about Federico Bernardeschi and
Fuming,
his
upset, frustrated.
frustration. So I think more so than anything, as Bob Bradley said, it was so important for this team, a team who has a ton of talent on it, to really experience that feeling of victory. And he said a feeling where you can point out every single player on the pitch, and as well as people who didn't feature come in and really feel like they played a part in that victory. And I think that's what we saw from TFC. It was really top to bottom impressive performance, really.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, listen, think about it in the sense that this was their fourth game of the season. They hadn't won anything yet, but it's not just the fourth game. We're talking a month from when they started to this match.
Exactly.
Without a win. It's a long time, right? So I completely understand. They needed the motivation. They needed the boost. And they needed, especially the fact that it was at home, cherry on top. Home fans were there. I know Bob Bradley referenced a little bit the weather here. It was brutally cold on Saturday night. There wasn't a great turnout at BMO Field. I cannot fault the fans for this one. I'm sure people were just warm watching at home. But the fact that they still got that W in front of however many fans that
about
turned.
20,000, yeah.
20,000 fans in the freezing cold. I think it was really, really crucial for this team.
Yeah, and just a few notes from the game. Obviously, Jonathan Osorio was the one who opened the scoring. By the way, a really pretty team goal. I think that's a goal that Bob Bradley would absolutely enjoy, and that's the type of goals I think Bob Bradley wants to have his team scoring. Very intentional, very deliberate, and a very well-rounded team goal finished off by Jonathan Osorio, who's now scored in each of his 11 seasons with Toronto FC, extending an all-time TFC record. So I thought that was really cool. Obviously, as well, Richie Laret and Federico Bernardeschi getting their first assists of the season. Marc-Anthony Kaye scoring his first goal as a Red at BMO Field, which is a little bit special because he's obviously a Toronto native, and for him, I know he was part of this club for a very long time growing up, and he went to LAFC, and now has come back to TFC. So for him to score his first goal in front of friends and family, I thought was very special. And just lastly, Michael Bradley recorded his 100th victory for Toronto FC in MLS action. So a couple of milestones just there across that win. But maybe more so than anything, what led to this victory, and it's something players touched on after the game, was that it sounds like at the beginning of the week, they had a tough video session where they had to have some tough conversations, some tough, honest conversations. And let's hear what Marc-Anthony Kaye had to say about that.
Yeah, I think when we looked back on the last game, we established that there were certain things that we needed to clean up on in terms of being quick to react to things and just being alert for every play. And you know, what Bob told us at the beginning of the game was to just how many plays can we all be focused for in 90 minutes. And I think you really saw that from the guys tonight. And that allows everything else to kind of flourish and get out of the team. So I'm glad that we were able to take what, you know, it wasn't an easy discussion at the beginning of this week. It was a little frustrating, but we took that and we put it into this performance. So guys are going to feel good and feel confident that when we do have these tough conversations, it means that, you know, it's for the good of the team and that we can adapt and perform better.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Frustration was clearly starting to boil over, and it sounds like on Tuesday that they had everybody get into the video room, and they had to be brutally honest. Here's what Jonathan Osorio had to say about that. He said, the team was moving well. I think we improved from the first 3 games, a lot of talking and video and stuff, fixing stuff during the week, and I think today in our game it showed. Defensively, we were aggressive, and we found ourselves to step and make ourselves high on the pitch, and I think on the ball we were really good. That was a team that was informing, you know, it's a really good performance today. So again, he's hinting at that sort of meeting that they have, which potentially, who knows what happens from here on out, but we could potentially be looking back on maybe the season as a whole, and maybe that meeting could be the turning point of this TFC season. We'll see exactly how this plays out, but I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that room.
Yeah, no doubt. Having tough team meetings like that can definitely be difficult, but also in the long run help you. And I will not fault TFC for the game that they played in the sense that they outplayed Miami. For sure. More shots on target. They looked better. Passing accuracy, almost 80%. But Mikey, I was holding my tongue there, but those goals were not pretty. Richie Larea and Bernadeschi, fantastic. Yeah. I thought they were great. Richie had a great game, but the first goal from Ozo, I thought was a bit, I don't know, he was kind of going down, he was getting pushed, so it could have converted to a penalty, but it was also really quick. I had to rewatch it several times, but I thought it was a little messy. But Marc-Anthony Kaye was facing away from the net during a cross. He has turned the other direction, and it goes off his back shoulder and just kind of pops over the goalie, who I don't even think had a clue what was going on, because he was like, well, it's not going to be the man that's facing away from me. Listen, Sean Johnson, great game again as well, but though the goals, I'm concerned about what's happening up front. Io Akinola again, can't finish. I was worried about that, but overall, I hear what you're saying. They looked so much better as a whole. But I'm worried about what's happening up front right now.
Yeah, that's definitely still a concern. But, you know, I thought the first goal, I thought it was a really pretty goal. And, yeah, sure, the finish wasn't the cleanest, but we've seen that's how Jonathan Osorio has scored many of his goals. But it was everything before.
Yeah, Bernadeschi.
It was Brandon Servania winning the ball back in the midfield. It was the ball that Marc-Anthony Kaye played. I didn't think he saw Bernadeschi because I got, like, the bird's eye view from the press box. I saw Bernadeschi. I'm like, Marc-Anthony Kaye is facing the other way right now. I don't think he sees him. But yet, across his body, he plays a beautiful diagonal pass in the air, finds Bernadeschi, who eventually lays it off to Richie Larea, who then finds Osorio in the box. I thought that was a really well-intentional,
passing up to it was,
well-worked goal. And, yeah, the second goal, you know, wasn't pretty whatsoever, but you also have... You've now won set pieces. That's something Bob Bradley talked about actually before the match and after the match, is that TFC weren't winning enough set pieces leading up to the start of last game, because that's why they were bunkering. So he's not the only reason, but it's part of the reason why they were bunkering so deep in their halves. They weren't winning corners. They weren't winning free kicks. So they do win the free kick, and whenever you have a guy like Federico Bernadeschi or Lorenzo Insigne that can whip in a ball, you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, very fortuitous bounce. But yeah, they'll take it at this point. You're
Well,
right,
like,
though.
don't get me wrong. Like, that's the thing. Football is football. It might not be pretty, but they got the win. Like, I completely understand that. Let's talk about, Sean Johnson really quickly, though. I referenced him a bit, though. He was, again, such a crucial part to this team, and you're really seeing why TFC went after him. He really saved them again, I felt. And it also looks like he's becoming more confident with the team and with the players. But, I mean, he's so important to this team. The first 4 games of the season, I mean, he's made saves that have saved them completely.
Yeah, his first clean sheet as a member of Toronto FC. It took TFC 22 matches last year to get their first clean sheet. It's really a foreign word around these grounds right now. But for Sean Johnson to pick that up 4 matches in was really good. And here's what Bob Bradley had to say about his new number 1 keeper after the match.
Yeah, early there weren't many big chances, but when you need him 1 or 2 times early on, he's there. You can always see what Sean brings just in the way when situations develop. He sets himself well. He's always in a good position. He's not guessing, and so that allows him to make those kind of saves. So yeah, he makes those plays. Handled some of the different situations with our build-ups in terms of mixing up some of the ideas. So in all those ways, I thought he did a very good job.
Yeah, so Sean Johnson, like I said, picked up his first clean sheet. He actually, I don't think he was asked to do too much at all in this match. I think he maybe made
the first half
1 or 2 saves first half, and saves he probably should have made. So I thought TFC in front of him did a really good job of defending. Sigurd Rosted and Matt Hedges, they're starting to click. They're starting to form a partnership, and I thought this was by far their best game. Sigurd Rosted was an absolute beast in the air, and that's one of the things Bob Bradley talked about when he brought him over, is how good he was in the air. We haven't really seen it yet until last match, where I thought he had a really good match. Raul Petretta as well. Richie Larea did really well defensively to help out. They actually allowed 0 big chances from Miami. There was no clear-cut opportunities for Miami, and that's a team that came in form.
Yeah.
Right? They got shut out by NYCFC at Yankee Stadium last game, but before that, you're beating Montreal and you're beating Philadelphia, the 2 best teams in the Eastern Conference. So it was a Miami team that was heading into BMO Field fairly confident, and TFC did a good job stifling anything that they could get going up front. So TFC made an investment this offseason. That was to shore up their defense. And early on, it's paying dividends. Like, over their last 3 matches, they've only allowed 2 goals. And if you look at where they were last season, where they allowed 66 goals in all competitions, or actually just in MLS, it's a massive improvement so far. It's early, I know, but you could see that there is some improvement there. So that part's exciting for a team that wants to figure out up top what to do. But they have the back line sorted out, it looks like.
I think that's the concern, is that, listen, early days, we are speculating. We're deep diving into a team that just, started their season. But even if they can hold up in the back and concede, many less goals than last season, my concern is the front now. It's almost funny because it's just like a complete flop from last season, right?
I mean, we'll see what happens when Lorenzo Insigne gets back too, right? That's a difference maker up top.
Yeah, of course. Brandon Servania.
Oh, yeah. No, we do need to talk about him, because he's a guy who TFC acquired late in preseason, right? I don't even know if he spent any sort of preseason with Toronto FC. But he's come in and stepped into the starting 11 in place of Lorenzo Insigne, and he has been a baller with TFC. And here's what Bob Bradley had to say about Sylvania after the match.
He's solid. There's a lot of really good starting points. He's a very good guy. He wants to learn. He trains well every day. He's got a good mix as a midfielder between working hard and still having a way when balls come of how he can arrange himself and connect passes. There's little things that maybe we talk about that are slightly different than things he's heard before, but he seems to be always open, and I think he's played well.
The question now is Brandon Servania becoming a must-start for Toronto FC? I mean, I look at this guy in the midfield and kind of what Bob Bradley was saying. He's this perfect mix between a guy who works relentlessly hard, gets into challenges, gets into tackles, is tough in the midfield, but also has the skill be on the ball, pick up passes, control the midfield at times. He makes some plays in tight areas that you're not used to seeing MLS midfielders make. He has the skill to do that and the composure to do that. And is he a must start at this point? It's tough because you look at TFC's midfield three. It's Mark Anthony Kaye, it's Jonathan Osorio, it's Michael Bradley. I think it's going to be tough to displace any of those guys because I know Mark Anthony Kaye has had a tough start to the year, but he still does so much off the ball and defensively that helps TFC out, especially when you have Michael Bradley in the midfield. So there's a good balancing act there with TFC's midfield. And then when Singh comes back, he obviously gets his place back in the starting lineup. It's tough to find a spot for Sylvania in this team, but he's doing everything he can to make his case to be a starter on TFC. He's a baller.
Well, that's all you can ask for, and it's not a bad option to have off the bench because, as we know with TFC, there's been issues with injuries and depth. So, I mean, at this point, if I'm Bob Bradley, I'm taking it, and I'm so happy that there's a player that's coming off the bench or starting or replacing other players and playing the way he is playing, giving everything, leaving everything on the pitch. And like you said, he's a baller. He's playing some class football.
No, 23 years old, man. It's a perfect addition for a team that has a lot of older players and a lot of really young players. He's kind of like in the mix. And you look at that trade in preseason, Jesus Jimenez going for Brandon Servania right now. It's looking like a pretty tidy piece of business for Toronto SC.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, guys. Well, TFC are back in action on Saturday against San Jose. But remember, it's the international break. So is Team Canada facing off against Curacao. No Ozo, Richie Larea, Mark Anthony Kaye, or Ayo Akinola. Big week for Bob Bradley. We will have you covered for both those matches later on this week.